Hello again, everybody. This is Tracy Sizemore. We are on day 27 of RPG A Day, August 27th, and the question is, what are your essential tools for good gaming? I think that's right. Here's my answer. Essential tools for good gaming. Number one, players who want to play. The better the players are, the better the game is. In fact, I kind of think, over the course of time, that I'm a better GM than I am a player. I don't like that. I don't love the fact that I'm not as good a player as I am a GM. And it's not to say that I'm a great GM. And that's why I don't love that. And the reason I say that is because as a GM, and when I've got my adventure and I've got I know it well and I'm running something that I feel comfortable with and confident in, I have players at my table who are so clever and so smart and come up with such great ideas. It's stuff that I would never come up with. I would never be able to come up with that stuff. And I, as a GM, feel like I'm asking them to do that. To think out of the box. Now I go to great pains to encourage it. To say, whatever you come up with, I want to hear it. I want to hear your ideas. I don't care how crazy they are, because I'm interested in using those ideas and making them work for the game. I don't want to tamp down on any idea that a player might have, especially a player who might be shy or nervous about being there or inexperienced as role-playing. I want any idea they come up with, especially if they're shy, and I'm going to take it, I'm going to run with it. So I encourage it, but some of the things that they come up with, it's just, wow. That is amazing. That's a great idea, and it's something I would never have come up with myself. And because I rely on that, because as a GM I love it when they do that and rely on it. I look at myself as a player and go, man, I'm a babe in the woods as far as playing goes. And I'm not sure why that is. I think as a player I feel a bit more constrained than as a GM. As a GM, I can play some NPCs that I would never be able to play as a player. I can play some over-the-top, crazy things that as a player you could never really get away with. That's how I feel anyway. But number one essential tools to good gaming, having good players. I can deal with everything else. I can handle everything else. But as long as I have good players at the table, everything's going to be fine. Now, there are secondary tools, but what may be more interesting is that they're the tools that I don't use. So, like, I don't tend to use a GM screen. No, I never use a GM screen. This seems to be a common thing that people use. There's all kinds of reasons to use it, and I totally get that. Sometimes they have tables on them that are useful. I can admit that that would be useful. Having the tables that you need without having to flip through a book. And some people want to hide their dice rolls. And that I don't do. I used to think way back a few years ago, several years ago, I used to think that, I don't know if I should, I would fudge rolls. I admit it. Sometimes I would fudge rolls. Now, I would never fudge rolls in favor of me. I'd fudge rolls in favor of the players. There are people who have different philosophies about this, right? All valid, whatever. I don't care what you do, but I used to do that. And what I've come to realize is that that's a sign of lack of confidence for me. For me it is. It was a sign of my lack of confidence in my GMing skills to fudge rolls. I didn't know how to set up encounters that challenge the players without, imminently killing them. And it's not that I didn't know, it's that I didn't have confidence that I knew. Or I didn't have confidence that, adversity is a good thing. So I used to fudge rolls because I felt like, I want my players to have fun and I don't want them to suffer because of my mistakes in setting up an encounter incorrectly or whatever. Nowadays, I don't fudge rolls. Never. Because it's just it's a philosophy that I have embraced, that let the dice sort of determine that let the dice be the randomizer. Don't take away that. Don't take that away from the dice, and don't take away that from your players. And so, not only do I not use a GM screen because I don't want to hide dice rolls, I actively want my players to see what I roll. Because that's part of the fun of it. And sort of, one of the Savage Worlds sort of encourages this kind of thing as well. Hiding dice rolls behind a GM screen is just, especially in the game like Savage Worlds where there's exploding dice, and if the players don't see that happen, you're taking a little bit of the fun of the game away. Even if it's bad for them. So as I've gained confidence and experience as a GM, I have realized that kind of thing is not what I want to do. And now I embrace and actively love. Here's my dice. I'm rolling them. I'm going to roll them right in front of you so everybody in the world can see what I rolled. If I miss, I miss. If I hit, I hit. If I kill you, I kill you. This is the game. This is the way it is. And it's funner that way. It just is. I don't know. It's all about confidence, I think. But for me, there's different arguments, and I'm getting off on a tangent, but I'm sort of explaining that as in terms of why I don't use a GM screen. There's another reason, is that I don't want a piece of cardboard between me and my players. My whole reason for gaming is to connect emotionally and narratively with my players at the table, to have that kind of interaction and fun, and I don't want a barrier there that separates me from them. No. I do not use a GM screen, and that's why. So to me, a GM screen is not an essential tool for gaming. Another thing that I don't use, dice towers or any kind of help rolling dice. I don't know. I like having physical dice, but I just don't care. I mean, I understand it, why people would want them. Keeps them in a specific area and all that stuff, but I don't know. I just like rolling dice, on the table, out in the open, right there in front of everybody. One thing I will say, as far as what I do use, I use an iPad. So when I write adventures, I mean, you can put all that in an iPad. You can, put your essential information about the adventure in a document or a OneNote on your iPad. I have not tried OneNote yet. I've heard a lot about it. I'm going to try to transition into OneNote. Right now, I just do sort of stream of consciousness in Word, so it's sort of a mess. I'm going like this a lot when I run a game. But most of the time I've got that mostly memorized anyway, so all I need to do is find an NPC or whatever so I can find out what their aspects are in Fate or what their stats are in Savage Worlds. You know, that's really all I need it for. But I use the iPad because it can have everything all there in one little package. My iPad is cellular enabled, so I don't have to rely on Wi-Fi in order to get access to my cloud stuff. And I use like OneDrive, Microsoft OneDrive, to put everything on the cloud so that wherever I'm going, if I'm at a con or whatever, generally I'm going to have signal and I'll be able to just download the document I need for that adventure from the cloud and go from there. Now, of course, I also have backups, because just in case, if I didn't charge my iPad, or if I don't have signal, or for whatever reason, I can't get to the document I need to run that adventure, I have a file folder that has a printout of that document as well. I tend not to use it because it's more cumbersome. It takes, you have to flip pages and all this stuff. But I have that file folder anyway, of course, because of pregens, which brings me to my next point, my next essential tool. Especially for one-shots and especially at cons. Pre-generated characters. Now obviously, pre-generated characters, a lot of people use them. Not all, not everybody. Some people want to create characters at the table, or they want to be able to give their players more agency in creating their characters. I believe strongly in creating pre-generated characters that are interesting and fit with the adventure that you're going to run. So I do not believe in having a pre-generated character that has skills that will not come up in the adventure you're running. This is a common sort of mistake that people make, I think, is that they don't, they'll have pre-generated characters, but they haven't put customization time into those characters to make it fit with the adventure, or make them fit with the adventure. I think that's super important. And to me, it's important. And to tell you the truth, when I'm creating a new adventure, like the most obvious example in this case is Teen Crush. Teen Crush was very challenging to create. Teenage superheroes run in Savage Worlds supers with the Superpowers companion. There's a lot that goes into that. There's Savage Worlds is Savage Worlds. It's fairly basic. You start adding superpowers to Savage Worlds, it gets a lot more complicated, a lot more interesting. And so when I created Teen Crush, I had to create the adventure for Teen Crush, and I had to create pre-gens for Teen Crush. I spent at least as much time creating the pre-gens as I did the adventure itself. And it paid off. It pays off. Because those pre-gens, I've gotten people coming to me and saying, these pre-gens are so good that I'd want to keep playing my character after this adventure was over. And that's awesome. That's awesome. To me, that's not necessarily why I do it, but I do it because I want the player to immediately, again, this is part of that beginning of the session, and then finding that line where we're all playing and not awkward anymore, right? Shortening that time span as much as possible includes creating great pre-gens that people can engage with almost immediately. And that means there's a lot that goes into that, and there's a philosophy about it that we can argue all day long. But in particular with Teen Crush, that was a particularly big challenge. Again, because of the complications of superpowers and the mechanics of Savage Worlds, and creating those fiddly bits that you need to have in order to run supers. In addition to creating a background that is not too long. You don't want too long, couple of sentences, few sentences, that's really all you need. And doing it in a way that explains what you do, not who you were, but who you are. You want something that's going to appeal to everybody in terms of your selection of pre-gens, and you want something that the players will engage with and feel a kinship with as soon as possible. This is not easy to do. And to truth be told, creating the pre-gens for Team Crush took hours and hours and hours of time. Hours of time. And tweaking. I mean, after the first, second play tests, I would tweak the pre-gens just a little bit to finalize them and make them perfect, as best I could. And they fit with the adventure that I'm running. They each have their own skills that are potentially useful in that adventure. They do not have skills that are not useful in that adventure. Nobody has boating, for example, because we're not going to be going boating in that adventure. And it's easy to do that. It's easy to sort of say, oh, I'm going to take these pre-gens from here, from this resource I have, and just go with them, with whatever adventure I'm going to run. And that's great, but I don't do that. I feel like it's just as important to customize those pre-gens to the adventure as it is to write a good adventure to begin with. So that's another essential tool of good gaming for me, is having well thought out and carefully drawn pre-generated characters for my one-shots. Other than that, you know, dice. I like dice. I don't like apps that roll dice. Some people do. Some people like to bring their iPad and have a little app that rolls dice for them. No. I like rolling dice. So I bring dice. And especially to cons, you have to bring extra dice, because you never know with people whether they'll show up with the right dice or not. There's obviously the trappings that you would normally need for whatever particular game you're playing. So you need counters for inspiration for D&D, or you need bennies for Savage Worlds, or a card deck for Savage Worlds, or a couple even. Those are things you just need to run those systems. They're not necessarily essential tools for good gaming, because I guess I'm counting those tools as things that I would need to run the best game that I can. And first among those is having good players, and everything else is an iPad and good pre-gens for a one-shot. That's all secondary. Ultimately, if I have good players, I'm way ahead of the game. So that's what I hope to do, is those are my tools. And I have customized and trained, I've customized my games and trained my audience to know what kind of games that I'm going to run, and hopefully I've started to attract the people who want to play in them. That takes time too. But that's a subject for another video. Alright, I've talked enough. Sorry for all my tangents. I hope it's all worth it. But there it is. Okay, I will talk to you tomorrow for day 28. Okay, bye.